All right, so glad you all can make it tonight. Like I said, this is we're Vectorworks User Group, and we're going to look at just a few of the new features in 2011. There's a lot to cover and keep us busy for the rest of the winter and spring. I think talking about all these features, but I'm going to hit on a few of my favorites that I've come across. I haven't done any projects completely with 2011 yet, but so I'm just sort of still playing around with it on the side. But one of the great new features, I think, is the integration of 2D and 3D. Everything that you draw now in 2D will show up in 3D, whereas before, if you had an object and you drew it in 2D, you'd flip it to an axonometric view or something, and it would lose that ability to be seen. They introduced screen planes, I think, in 2008 or 9, I think it was, that allowed those objects to remain oriented to the design layer on the model, but they still lost their graphics attributes. So one of the great new features is that the graphic attributes do show up in 2D as well as 3D. So this is something I usually look at when I'm first introducing Vectorworks to somebody. Is these different objects. Let me ungroup this. How Vectorworks sees objects. This first object is just a set of 4 lines, and it has no information. It has no fill. So I rarely use lines because they don't have any information associated with them. The next one is a rectangle, which is pretty standard. But you do see over here in the object info that we do get some more information on it. It's the area, the perimeter for it, and rectangles are good, but they're not. You can only adjust them in one orientation. They still remain as rectangles. This other one is a polygon, and I like polygons. And anytime you add 2 objects together, they become a polygon. The great thing about polygons is that you can adjust these vertices and get a lot of more freeform shapes out of them. So you can when you add and subtract rectangles together, they become polygons. But you can begin to push and pull them and reshape them into different forms. This second object is a polyline. The only reason it's a polyline is because I chamfered this corner just ever so slightly. So anytime a polygon has a curve added to it, it becomes a polyline. So any objects with curves to them become polylines. And then this third object is an extrude, and it loses its fill in the 2D orientation. But when you rotate it up into a 3D view, it can take on a texture and be rendered. So as you can see here now in 2010, this really nice feature is that all these 2D objects will retain their 3D, will retain their fill characteristics. So even if you don't do any modeling in 3D, you're able to orient your plans in different ways, axonometric views, and be able to look at them in a different way, but the graphic attributes stay associated. So in previous versions, these would all just be empty rectangles or polygons, and they would lose their fill. So this is one of the great steps that I think is in Vectorworks 2011. So you can apply color fill to it. You can apply a hatch to it. Gradients can be applied to it. So any fill characteristics remain within the 3D view.
Brian, So you're in a 3D view now, and you're telling us that those things transfer over. Is wireframe gone, or what happens if you go to a wireframe view?
If you go to David, if you go to wireframe,
They're still there.
they still have their have fill. Yeah, so they fade out a little, and the great thing is even before when you rendered in OpenGL, anything else would disappear. Now even these will remain visible in an OpenGL rendering. So I think this is right off the bat one of my favorite new features in 2011 is the ability to you don't want to model everything when you're drawing. A lot of stuff you just draw some rectangles and sort of begin to work things out and add some walls, and you don't have to come in and add textures to the floor now. You can sort of use some of these patterns and hatches in the 2D world, but still have them visible in 3D. So
quick question. When I was playing with it myself, I noticed that sometimes there had to be certain settings for certain things to show up at the way you wanted it, like the way you have there is. And I wasn't quite sure what I was doing. I managed to get it to do what I want, but I think it was by accident. I didn't understand the different settings that say, show this in 2D.
Right, there is a setting that you...
Get that.
Yeah, there is a setting. I'm going to have to remember where I found that. Somewhere where you say show. I forget where that is. I know what you're saying, that there is a button that you have to turn on for it to show that.
So does that control the visibility or not of the fill? Is that what you're saying, or is it something else?
It controls the ability to show fill. It says
Okay.
show as a screen plane.
Yeah, I figured it out by accident.
And I did too, and now I'm having an accident trying to remember how I got there.
Well, that's what the help button's for.
Yeah.
You can always go there. When in doubt, go online.
I'm sorry, I don't know where that setting is.
I thought it was one of was it the layer plane versus the other one?
Layer plane, screen plane.
Yeah, I think that's what I. The menu button.
Yeah, well, they introduced the layer plane and screen plane. If you take this object, it's now set to show up on the layer plane. If I flip it to screen plane, this is the way it used to work
That's
when you had 2D objects and you tried to flip something up into 3D. It would always stay in your face, oriented to the screen. So now you can take 2D objects and apply them to the layer plane, and they'll reorient to the design layer orientation.
Pretty cool.
So another great feature is now that the graphics work in 3D, and so does text. Text works in 3D now, so as well. So we can type in some text, and again, it's right now set to the screen plane, but we can orient it to the layer plane, and that stays true to the layer plane. And the same with dimensions. You can dimension an object. Again, I need to reset my orientation here you have to set your working plane. Working planes are much more important in this version. You use the working plane and set it to the design layer, and now I can begin to, leave that set. Use my dimension. Why didn't that orient the right way?
You have to adjust to where it says on the top there, screen plane to layer plane. There, yeah.
Yes, that's probably my problem. Thank you, Paul. So yeah. So now, before in 2010, it would allow the dimensions to rotate, but it would just have a box where the dimension should be. So now you're able to dimension in 3D as well. So working planes are important in this version, and they're easier to set up. If you click on this working plane, you now have these buttons to be able to rotate them around, spin them around, and reorient them pretty quickly on the fly. And you're able to then, reorient an object, flip it up in this other mode for shift it to the layer plane. I can click on this. Oops, I got to set my X and Y, and it automatically flips up to this new design layer, to my working plane.
How to do that again?
It's it's the hidden mode here under the set working plane. There's a line plane.
Oh, okay.
So you click on a line plane, you set your X and Y axis, you select an object. Oh, that's a line. It's not really going to do me much good. So select an object, line working plane, set my X, gives me a little X prime there down at the bottom, my Y prime, and that pops it up to my 3D working plane. So now that everything stays true to that working plane, even though it is just a polygon object. It has no extrusion and has no thickness. It can show up and appear in 3D. So you don't have to really go into modeling as much as you used to be able to get some nice graphic presentations.
If you move it in the X or Y direction, it'll move on the working plane?
Yeah, so now if I move it around, it's going to stay oriented.
But I mean, go Command M or whatever it is, it would move in
Yeah, it's going
relative to that working plane?
Ooh, yeah.
Yes, the red is the X,
Okay.
the green is the Y, and the blue is the Z. So yes, it moves. If you use your move command, it will move in that orientation.
When you go to a front view, then how is everything?
So if we look at it from the front view, everything else sort of remains flat and we don't see it, but this is up in the front view. So it does orient front, right ISO. So these 2D objects, now work in 3D. So I think this is right off the bat one of my favorites. And now as well, you can also do annotations. So we can go to our annotation under the dimensions here, do a call out. Just buried. Where's my call out tool? I haven't set this up the way I. General notes. So am I missing something here? Huh, I guess, no, they've moved the call out tool up here, that's right. So now, if I were to do a call out on this, that orients as well to the working plane and can be adjusted. And the other nice thing is text is greatly improved. Remember when you used to click on, well, this isn't the best example, but like here, when you used to click on text, it would always jump up into a box and you wouldn't get the actual size of it, and it would change. So now the text stays true to the size. It doesn't jump and change. You see what you see is what you get when you click out of it. So that's also another great improvement.
Any chance for spell check?
There is a check spelling in there. You have to have the block of text highlighted and then run it. So they're.
A question on working planes. Now that you can set the working plane, if you used to be able to rotate your orientation, so you could kind of take your X and Y axis and rotate it, 45 or whatever angle you were working on. Can you still do that in a rotated working plane?
Rotate the working plane?
Right, like up there, where it says 0.00 on 00 degrees on your all the way over on the upper.
Here?
Yeah.
I have not played with that. The rotate plan. I don't know how that interacts with it. No, so I guess
That
it's
doesn't work in
a
that view.
3D top plan view. But now, it behaves a lot more like SketchUp, where you can do dimensions and annotations in a 3D model and have them stay true to the working plane.
Now, does all that disappear when you go to top view? Is that rectangle just become a line?
The rectangle will just become a line. You see it here. There's the block of text, sort of not quite on it. So yeah, it still changes the orientation and when it would, depending upon which view you're looking at it from. So the other thing, I think this became available in, let's see, 8 or 9 as well, is the ability to scale a hatch. Do I have a hatch in there? And also now you get a preview of the hatches. You used to just get a long list of them. So now I can apply a hatch and be able to scale it up and down without having to go in and recreate it. I can reorient it, adjust my origin so my brick starts here, my brick coursing starts here from the bottom corner. I can grab it in the middle and rotate the orientation of it, so you're able to adjust and scale hatches within the drawing.
Right, but it would have come in with a 4x8 brick or something or other. And when you're doing that, you're changing the whole dimension of the brick.
Right,
So it works better with other things rather than bricks.
right,
Okay.
right. Yeah, you're changing the
Like pieces of gravel.
the proportion of the brick. Yeah, you're when you grab it here, it's telling you the scale factor of 1.8. Down to what you see, the heads-up display giving you the scaling factor.
So it no
For
longer
that
goes
change.
from the origin, which is annoying. When you if you start a hatch, it will go from your origin on the page 00. So if your drawing or elevation happened to be at a certain point on the page, then you couldn't control where your brick started.
Right, unless you applied it to that object and it turns into a group. And
Yeah, then you have to do it that way, and then you lose the interactive. You have to go back and fix all the lines, and that's annoying.
right.
One of the things that they said at the, what do you want to call that, road show thing they did a few weeks ago, was they're actually moving toward doing away with hatches. and they're replacing them with something they call tiles,
Right.
or tiling, which is a little, like that is a little bit more friendly. Because the hatches were kind of like real world associated. You could move a box across a hatch, and the hatch doesn't move, but the box moves. And they're supposedly a lot easier to add, because hatches are easier to add.
Well, thank you for that segue, Sean. We'll
Okay.
get into tile
Sorry about
patterns.
that,
No, steal my thunder. No, so yeah, if any of you have gone in and tried to, create a hatch, you know what a nightmare it can be. You go in to create a new hatch, and you get this dialog box. It hasn't changed since I've been using it, and since 8.5, and it's still as frustrating as ever. And you got to know the offset, and you got to, you can try and monkey around with it by hand here and pull things around, and you set your offset and your start point and your repeat, and you add another level to it to get some brick coursing, and it's just a real pain to work with. So hatches hopefully will go by the wayside, because you're really limited. You can only do straight lines, and with tiles now we can let's see.
You want to be able to proportion the thing.
Yeah, with tiles.
Do it in ArchiCAD.
So with tiles, now you can draw any object, and it'll make a tile pattern. So now let's add a new resource called a tile here, and you can orient it to page size or world size, so it's stays scale to your drawing. Apply it to your rotate in your wall or symbol. Choose your background fill. So now we get sort of our editing dialog box, and we can just start drawing shapes here. So this is a simple one square tile pattern. And we can grab these different pieces and begin to move them around and adjust them to our liking. So now we get this sort of staggered tile pattern, and we can apply that to this object. And it's much easier than trying to create that brick pattern. First of all, with the hatch pattern, you could only have one background color. Here, each of these can be individual if we add more complex ones. This is just a bunch of lines. This is really fun to play with. You can get into a lot of custom tile patterns. So we'll add another new tile here. And again, you can create any shape. You then can give these shapes. You can't put a hatch within a hatch, but you can give them a gradient. You can give them a hatch. You can't put a tile within a tile. You can put a hatch in there. We can put a gradient in there. So that's just one object.
Is that automatically doing 9? Is that?
It automatically gives you the offset of the preview of the X and Y of 9 of them.
Okay.
So if we we can come in and begin to build up this tile pattern and begin to add additional objects, and those can work independently of it, or they can all work in unison. No, it's each one as you add it, it begins to work independently. Oh, here, now they're working. If I go up here and grab, if I grab the original, I can relocate that one piece. But if I come up here and grab one of the duplicates, it moves that whole group. So now you get a lot more ability and flexibility to create custom tile patterns. So, forget about hatches. Hopefully those can go away, because we can actually do real bricks, give them some tones and gradient, a couple different colors, red brick, brown brick, a little bit of a mix up a combination so it's not so flat. So, tiles is a great new feature, and it also resides here in your attributes palette. Here are some of the standard pre-built ones that come with it. Simple tile roof, and again, you can use your attribute mapping and be able to adjust and scale these up and down as you need, and reorient them in any orientation. So tiles is also my second new favorite object.
Can you scale in the, like in a tile situation like that, does it scale across the X and Y axis equally, or can you scale one more than the other?
It does it evenly, yes. So yeah, I can't squish it out of proportion
That would be convenient.
unless.
Oh wait, it looks
Wait.
like you did.
Can you distort it by making a polygon, or put it in perspective or something to make the tiles?
Well, yeah, I guess if you use the heads-up display here, oops, go to the. So let's see, time. So I'm going to make it 2 wide and 1 tall.
Oh, there we go.
No, it's still scaled them down proportionally. So no, I guess it looks like it's, unless there's some kind of option or alt key that you might be able to override, it looks like it, it does scale down proportionally. Because if you usually when you grab a rectangle in the middle, it allows you to stretch that side, but when you grab something here in the middle, it turns into the rotate mode. So I think, tile patterns are going to add a lot of flexibility to the ability to do just that, tile patterns and brick patterns and whatever graphic
Do they fill
interest.
complex shapes the same way? Like if you were to do a multi-sided polygon or something, does it fill it the same?
Yes, it'll take any 2D
Okay.
object and let's create some kind of polygon. So yeah, we could put together a jigsaw puzzle.
What I was wondering was
So-
if it would fill, in other words, the way a hatch sort of fills a shape.
Oh, yeah.
Like say you've got, even in I can't remember if it worked in 2D or was just in 2D or not, but
Yeah, so if I
multi-sided polygon with a couple of cutouts and, subtract, and then it just sort of fills that.
yeah, so if I add these two together, it's
Right.
going to be, and I edit it.
But Brian, if you add them together and then extrude it, and look at it in 3D, does it happen like a texture? Does it show?
It does not,
It does not.
but that's where we'll get into that here in a minute. You're leading me on here.
I was gonna,
You're asking the right questions.
That tells you Dave's paying attention.
So what you do then is when you can extract a surface off of your 3D object and apply it to it. So we'll look at that here in a minute. So everything, so this again will show up in any view, even though it's just a 2D polygon, any orientation. It does keep its pattern, and we do see some overlap where they're crossing over. So you can apply transparencies to the objects as well. Edit the geometry. So if I change this opacity down to so overlap, we're getting some wild stuff going on. So the other thing was you are able to set the different background. I just had the background fill to white. If you wanted to have some kind of grout color or whatever that is part of your tile pattern, you can set the background color to be something different. So moving on to the 3D world of things here. Does anybody use SketchUp here? SketchUp players? And you use it in conjunction with Vectorworks. As Vectorworks, before you'd have to do all your solid addition, subtraction. When you're modeling, you'd have to create extrudes and subtract it from another object, and begin to build up your model out of components. But now we'll just create a 10-foot let its position here at the center. So we just got our rectangle. And now they've had this tool. It was called the protrusion cutout tool. They've renamed it as the PushPull tool. Here it's PushPull. You'll be learning this shortcut if you get it. Shift R. But the PushPull now begins to allow us to act like we're working in SketchUp. So the face, we got three modes. We got the extrude face, we got the move face, and we've got a subface mode which allows us to subtract something from this. So with the first mode, the extrude face, we hover over the face we want to adjust, and boom, we can pull that up. Click on this face, pull that out. Click on this face. Push and pull is, if you hold down the, the command key, or the alt key, alt option key, I can select this face in the back and begin to pull this face. Or if you hold down the alt key, I can get to faces that I can't see. So I'm able to begin to push and pull my model around. Again, the working planes is important. So now set my working plane to the top here, draw a circle on top, go back to my push-pull, Shift-R, and I'm working right here on top of the model. Shift-I is my other shortcut here for the working plane. Draw a
Shift-I, you said?
Shift-I. Draw a rectangle here on the side, Shift R, my push-pull. And before working in 3D, you could not really work accurately in an axonometric view. You draw something in axonometric view, and it looked like the corners were missing or lining, but when you flipped it over to the top plan, you're way off, or your front plan. So now you're able to really truly work in 3D.
Now, is that one complex object, or is that three objects that happen to be touching?
Right now, it is three separate objects.
Okay.
One weird thing I noticed when you did that, when you had your first rectangle, it became an extrude, but as soon as you edited it, it became an addition solid, a solid addition.
Yes, that allows me to ungroup this and go back to my saved history, because before we'd do, if we wanted to add or subtract something, we'd have to do an add solid or subtract solid. So, it still retains the different moves that we made. As long as it stays as a solid addition, some moves, when you do something, it turns to a generic solid, and you lose that ability to edit those steps that you took. So, yeah, in essence, it's doing the solid addition and subtraction that we used to have to take two pieces and add them together to get one big piece. So now we're able to push and pull. So that was the first mode with the push-pull. The second, let me go to the third mode here first, since I don't have any faces to do. So let me again reorient my working plane. Shift I. Shift I. So reorient my working plane here to the front, and I can draw a line along this edge. And now, back in my push-pull, this third mode allows me to select this edge, select this object, and they may not, yeah, I didn't make connection there, so let me redraw this line. So Shift R, this third mode, select this. I guess I'm not quite making contact. So push pull, select this. Now that's saying it's locked. There we go. So that allows me to begin to split up that face. So Shift I, let me put a cylinder on top, a circle on top, I mean. Go back to my protrusion cutout, third mode. Select the object that I want to cut away, then select the object, the model that I want to take it away from, and that cuts that hole right in that object. I have my smoothing turned down. That's why it's, it's very faceted, but I'm very easily able to add and subtract from this volume. So now that I have this edge here that has a bit of a chamfer to it, I can show you this second mode. This is the move face mode. Let me orient here a little bit. So the move face mode will keep this geometry. So you can see how this chamfer will stay with it as long as it can. So as I adjust this face, this chamfer adjusts automatically. So if I undo that, if I go back to this first mode, if I were to select this face, it just pulls the face straight out. So this move face mode, keeps the geometry orientation. So the push-pull and is a great new feature. Then you can still do add these two pieces together if you wanted to make it one object. So you can still do some of the old school add solid, subtract solid, like we used to do. But it's a lot more intuitive and interactive. You can begin to.
Does a split line or split still work with this? I actually think, like if you.
Yeah. So if I were to go to a front view, yeah, that still does work. So if we use the split line, where is it?
The other one,
Where am I? Here. So if I were to do a split line across this, and let me undo that. I want to pick the third mode here where I can just draw a line across here and subtract that away and be able to begin to chop things off with the split line tool. So see what happens now if we go to our move mode. So now that's going to begin to move us up in that angle. Whereas if we go to the other mode, it sort of keeps the orientation the same way, and we're able to just extend the chimney on top here. So, anybody have any questions so far?
Is there like a rotate mode? I know in Autodesk you can draw like a circle and then hit rotate and it'll like make a donut shape.
Yeah, there's still the under the model commands. There's still the extrude, multiple extrude, tapered extrude, and sweep is what you would be talking about. Yeah, so these have been in all the versions that I've worked on since 8.5. So this is how you pretty much modeled before. You'd add solids, subtract solids, intersect solids, section solids. You do extrudes, multiple extrudes, extrude along path, tapered extrude, and sweep. Then there's a whole slew of 3D power pack tools in there that do some really advanced feature modeling. So yeah, before this version, this was pretty much where you'd have to go to be able to do your massing model, was with the model commands. So, this is a 3D model, but the other nice feature here is the ability to extract a face. So Sean was asking earlier, if I had that tile pattern and I extruded it, it would go back to sort of a primitive extrude and have just be a solid. But if I wanted to add a tile pattern to this edge, I can extract this face and it becomes a polyline that I can now apply a tile pattern to. And again, I think this is probably where, so this is where I was looking. It's create planar objects. Yeah, that's right. When you extract. Otherwise, it creates a NURBS. So it wasn't liking it in OpenGL there, so just flipped over to wireframe. Let's see if I just nudge that If I move that edge. So it's not liking the OpenGL rendering, but it
The normal maybe aim downward,
the
the direction of the plane may be actually inverted.
oh
So
yeah.
if it was pointing down to OpenGL, wouldn't be able to read it.
So we change that here.
I don't know where you can get to that with this.
So it's the plane's 3D. So with the extract
This is where I've had mixed results too.
face, I'm able to, you know, come. If this were a building, like, you know, I can put my brick hatch on here. I keep going to the wrong. So I can extract that face. Becomes a polygon. I can then again apply a color to it. Apply a gradient to it. So I don't have to go in and texture, you know, all my objects now. So I can take a wall, extract the face from it, and apply a brick hatch or a siding hatch to my drawing, and then when I put my viewports together, it's going to have that associated hatch now without going into, because before now you usually go into the viewport, then it begin to add your hatches and information into the viewport by tracing over the model. So now you can extract the face from your model, apply your graphic attributes to it, and you know then be able to. It's going to show up.
Did it show in hidden line, or because I've had mixed results where it showed in hidden line, but I also noticed that I had to do an update in order to get it to show up the way I wanted. Once I did the update, for whatever reason, it fixed the problem and it made and it worked much better.
Update. How'd you?
Update Vectorworks, so you know,
Oh.
you download it right from the CD and then you just go online and do one update.
Mm-hmm. So.
So was that, I'm sorry, that extract face, was that a command? I didn't quite see
Yeah,
where it came
that's,
from.
yeah, I'm sorry, I should have shown you guys where this all comes from. It's in the 3D modeling set. You know, you can, I usually just pull it off here to the side as its own toolbar. And that has our rotate that was, I kept hitting Shift-C and was able to spin around the model.
Mhm.
That activates that. Here's our working plane. And it's much easier to set a working plane to an object. You know, we do have some of these other 3D modeling features that are still in here. Then this was a push-pull,
Mhm.
and down here is the extract face.
Mhm.
And that also has been in the program for quite some time, but it's much more robust. You were able to extract a face, but it would create a NURBS surface that you could apply a texture to independently, but you couldn't apply these 2D graphic attributes to it. So I think, you know, the big improvement in 2011 is, you know, the graphic attributes working in 3D now. So you don't have to go into RenderWorks and do all the rendering of a model to get some textures or, you know, imply, you know, a brick pattern on your building. You can use some tiles. You can still use the old hatches, but you know, you're going to apply them directly to your model and have it, you know, stay with your model. But you know, it is an extracted face, and if I go back to adjust this model, you know, that face doesn't doesn't adjust, I'd have to go back and go back and edit this polygon and readjust it, or it's probably easier just to delete it, re-extract that face, and reapply your texture. So it is just a polygon on the face of your model. So any changes won't be reflected in it. So it's sort of the last step after you get your model created. You come back and
Another thing I noticed, if you have multiple layers, if you have, let's say, 2 walls on top of each other, you have a second floor wall and a first floor wall, you can view both of those layers at the same time, but you actually have to extract both of those surfaces, which you can do, and then you have to combine surface so that it's all one continuous polygon that you can then add a texture to.
Mm.
I noticed that too.
So, 2D and 3D are much better. 3D modeling is great with this push-pull. We're working like SketchUp. And one other thing, I don't know if this happened in 2010, was the design layer viewports came in, where you're able to reference a viewport within your drawing. So now I've got this one page set up. This is different layers within this page. I've set up over here different layers. I've got my model layer, which I'll work in, but I've set up different layers here for my left rear view, my rear view, my right rear, a couple sections. So with design layer viewports, if I come into my model, this is something that, not that I would ever want to go back to AutoCAD, but the ability in AutoCAD to see your model from a couple different points of view when you're working on it was a nice feature. But so here with design layer viewports, I'm able to, model and see it all in different 3D views. So now if I update all my viewports, just update those sections. So, the way I created it was to, I created a viewport, give it a name, and what I found is you have to put it on a different layer for each one, because if you try and put them on the same layer, they're all going to take on the view that you set up. So if I want to see something from the left view and I put my right view on it, when I change that to left view, everything is going to be left view. So that's why I had to come on in and set up a different layer for each one. So I'm going to say a new design layer, and I don't know what we'll call it. We'll just call this design layer 1. And the source, you can put it in a current document. This is great for bringing in pieces of an external document. When you're sharing a file across the office, you're able to bring in pieces of a drawing from somebody else. So, but we're just working here within the same drawing. And again, just like any other viewport, you have the ability to turn on the layers and classes. So here I want to turn off everything except my model, because when I create that viewport, it's going to show all the other layers in it. I just really want this model to be the focus of my viewport.
I'm a little bit baffled. Were those all separate viewports?
They're all separate viewports on separate layers. Yes, so they're a viewport put on a separate layer.
Now, when you
then
were
each
editing them, or when you were pushing and pulling, you were pushing and pulling on the viewport as opposed to back on your design layer.
No, I was working on the design layer, and all the other viewports are updating in the background.
Oh,
So all the other viewports are on layers, and all the layers are turned on. So yeah, what we're seeing here is all the layers turned on with a viewport in each design layer. So
Oh, you have the viewports are on.
the viewports, what I'm
design
doing,
layers, you aren't working on a viewport sheet.
no, we're working with putting viewports on design layers.
Okay,
So
all right, okay.
before generally we'd put our viewports on a sheet layer and begin to set up our presentation page.
Okay,
And now you can put them on design layers. I think that came in 10, maybe 9, I'm not sure, where you can put them on a design layer. So that's what I'm doing. I'm creating a new viewport on a new design layer. We're already in the middle of that. So that design layer 1. Again, you have sort of all the same settings as you generally have when you created a viewport. So here it's created this viewport. Let me make it the active only so I can see where it went. Oops, I'm moving everything here. Where is that? Edit viewport, design layer. No, see, so that's that viewport. I thought I'd turn things off, and I'm getting all this other stuff in the background. That's why when you create a design layer viewport, from the layer that had everything on, I need to turn everything else off. So that's what I was trying to get to. And I'm going to give this a lower left axonometric view, so we're looking at it from the bottom. And now go back to my show others, make my model active. So here I am working on the model layer, but I have all these other layers turned on that I've assigned these viewports to, and in each layer I've set the orientation up here, from the top, front, right, back, bottom, right isometric, and then I cut a couple sections. So each layer has its own orientation set up through this dialog box.
Brian, could you have put them all on one layer and just in the object info for each viewport changed its view? Do they have to be on separate layers?
In design layer viewports, I don't think we have that option to, like in the general viewport, you don't have that option to change the orientation. But like in a sheet layer viewport, we're able to create a viewport, then change it on the fly, as we're in that sheet layer, and duplicate them and change it, our top plan to a front plan. And so no, in design layers, as far as I know, even under advanced properties, I couldn't find anything. So.
And is it updating automatically because it's in a design layer without you having to hit an update button?
Yes. So only the section viewports you can see have their red line around them showing that they needed to be updated, but these other ones update on the fly. So back to our model layer. Oops. Set my working plane here to the front. Draw a rectangle on this face. So you can see it updated on all the viewports there. Use my Shift R to go into my push-pull. I'm going to take this face, take this found that sometimes selecting these faces can select off to the side. Let me try it again. I have had some trouble getting the selection to work.
Do you have your, on your constraints palette, do you have a constraint turned off?
It's highlighting that. Pick that. It's not. I don't know. Let's try put another object here on top. Shift R. Shift R. Yeah, I've had a. Go to. It is sitting on top there. Shift R. There we go. Some sign of life. Come on. Highlight that. Highlight
Just
that.
do it in the dialog box?
There we go. So again, here when you render something in OpenGL, everything else disappears. So you generally have to use a shaded polygon for. So I can view, update. I just need to get out of there and view, update my viewports. And that, updates my sections. So the thing I found, with the design layer viewports is your model grows, your orientation sort of changes and things begin to overlap. I'm working on this in 8th scale, I think, and I made these viewports at 16th. So, you can have different scales on different layers, like we always have been able to. So, I think design layer viewports can be a pretty neat tool for modeling when you're, it's easy enough to flip around it now and work on it, but you're able to see it here from a couple different angles, which you were able to do, have been able to do in AutoCAD before, but now we can sort of have different.
3D modeling programs allow you to have a multi-window view that you can have different viewports, and then you can select each one of them. It's a lot easier in that regard than having to kludge this together.
Yeah, so this is sort of a workaround to be able to have some of that ability that you can do in other programs.
Multi-window option would really be nicer in that regard.
Yeah, it's sort of always been something on my wish list, but this is sort of a hack workaround that we can use at least for now.
Kind of nice where you say, like, what happens if we put a window here and you just want to be able to answer that question in, 1 second. You don't want to have to do 5 steps. By the time you do that, you've lost interest. So
Right.
It's nice to be able to see, well, if you do that, you get this.
Yeah, so now we're able to sort of see things from different angles, real time as we model it. So this is a test. Let's see what happens when we use the extract face here. And give this.
Being old-fashioned, that means you could work on a plan and have 3D models on the same layer that would pop up as you move something on the plan.
But,
I'm used to picking on plans. So
Right.
I put a window in the plan, and I could have three different 3D views on my layer that would pop up, that would show what I'm doing in the plan.
Yeah, so yeah, this is just a solid model, but yeah, if we had walls and windows, we can have our front elevation and see what happens if we move our windows over in plan. We'll have the elevation. We'll sort of
Right.
see what's happening at the same time with the design layer viewports, instead of having to flip to the front view and look at it, flip back to the plan view, flip back to the front view, flip back and forth. So yeah, with the design layer viewports here, we're able to look at the model in different orientations, and as we again apply our gradients or hatches to the model, they do show up in the other viewports as well. So that more or less covers it in a nutshell. Has anybody else upgraded to 2011 yet? Anybody?
I had recently just got it, but I haven't got too far into it. During work, I'm trying to squeeze in some time, and it's just not working. I shut my door, but everybody opens it and comes in, and so I did. One of the reasons that I did purchase it is, unfortunately, we have a PC-based office, and I have a Mac at home, so I did load it on my one at home, and I can get something done at home and then go in and look like I know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great. It's a cross-platform program.
Yeah, and been taking some courses with my son at his high school, which is AutoCAD and Revit, and now I'm really confused every time I'm like this. I know this stuff. I know what I want to do, but what tool? And I'm searching, so I'm need to take a break and just focus on this. So this was good to come up and see other people that are using the program and your inputs. You had mentioned Autodesk, and you're glad you're not involved in that. What is one of the reasons that you like the Vectorworks over the AutoCAD, other than cost?
Well, yeah, cost is bottom line, yeah. But I think, the graphic attributes that you can get in this, AutoCAD, it does, I think it is working some more in 3D, but the ability to work more intuitively here in 3D, now with the push-pull, it's a lot like SketchUp, so you can take SketchUp out of the equation for some of your massing models right off the block and not have to worry about file transfers. You can, and then, with AutoCAD, every AutoCAD drawing I get from an engineer or other consultants, it's all line-based. This is all parametric objects. The walls are walls. We'll have another meeting on, just the improvements in the wall tool, the floor slab tool, the roof tool. It's a really building information model capable machine, for architecture-wise. I know there's some landscape architects that got a plug-in for landscape. And I think it's got the leading market share in that. Spotlight, there's stage designers. It's got a large market share in that. So it's a multi-dimensional program for many different users. But for architects, I think the ability for a one-person firm, I think a lot of people here are sole practitioners. The output that one person can do with creating a plan and a model and having viewports created out of that model, and the whole set of production with one person is a really great tool, and the price is definitely right, and the graphic attributes for it, even just in 2D. I do a lot of my just design board layout in I just do it in AutoCAD. I don't have to go into a page maker
In Vectorworks.
program. You know,
Not always have the vector.
Vectorworks, and yeah, so in Vectorworks, you know, it's got, you know, a lot of graphic 2D capabilities, a lot of 3D capabilities, and, you know, I think they work very well together with relatively small learning curve. You know, I know with Revit, you know, you have to know what you're designing before you can even design it. You have to be able to apply all this information to your wall before you can begin to draw a wall. Here you can draw a wall. You can draw a wall. It's 6 inches now, and come back and add information to it as your design develops down the road.
One of the things I wanted to do is to be able to design retaining walls. I do a lot of, and to be able to give someone a nice 3D modeling of the elevations and step-ups where they need to be is huge for me.
Mhm.
So I can just email them that drawing, how you look at it, then ask me questions later. They won't be asking a lot of questions because all the information will be there. So that's one of the tools, I think, in what we got, is it Landmark that does that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Landmarks got the
I
whole
haven't
land.
got into that, but I should be able to do that in that program, correct?
Yeah. So yeah, and
Good.
that's one of the new things in the Landmark is stepped walls. You're able to have a wall step down along the grade or whatever setting that you want it, and you know, it steps down across the bottom or at the top. You can have that step down wall orientation.